I'm surprised Ellen's not on, so I guess she'll go. The Delegate Taylor, good morning.
No. I'll make a motion to approve the document as presented. This is Melvin Wilson.
I second. Renata Brooks. Mhm.
I think I did that. Wait a minute. Are we voting? I'm in favor. I'm just below. Okay. Okay. I'm with her. Okay. Are you sure? Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Let's see here. I make a motion that we approve the proposed subcommittee structure.
Seconded.
Well, I guess one question. Where would you see researching other reentry innovative programs around the country? Which committee would you see that fitting under? Because I think that's, yeah, go ahead, Joshua, sorry. Remind me what MEGC is. Merit, equitable justice. Yeah. Okay. Right. Oh, great. And Melvin too. Melvin's our rep. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I think that the final report, I want to say January or February, Christian may be able to nail that down with more specificity, but that's my general understanding of the timeline.
Yes, it does. The only thing I want to, as we go along, is to make sure that we don't duplicate each other's efforts, in researching best practices. So I'm sure we'll figure that out as we go along.
Yes, and sorry to be off camera. I'm also a little under the weather today. I appreciate the structure, and I'm certainly 100% behind it. I see where there could be some duplicating of efforts, but I think that's where we have the opportunity for us to collaborate and collaborate across subcommittees.
Yeah.
I think we just have to be nimble and flexible and not, so rigid in the structure of it that we, you know what I mean? I think and communication is also really important. We have to make sure we know what all the other subcommittees are doing. So if, I guess if I was on one committee and the other committee seemed to be making more progress on an issue, I would give that up and let them handle it, and then come back at the end and talk it through. So anyway, I guess my comment is that I'm hoping that we will move forward with the spirit of not being too rigid and able to be nimble and collaborative.
I'm not sure exactly where would be the best place to insert this comment, but I just wanted to advise the committee that we recently went to a budget hearing, and we did put a plug in for a separate reentry budget, because right now what we do is sort of tucked under the DSO's budget, because as we talked about starting this off, technically we pulled resources from case management and other places to create this unit as it stands now. So everybody's probably aware that it's a tight budgetary situation in the state. So I said they would consider it like everything else we asked for. And I did mention that this committee was looking at what the law requires. So I just wanted to put that out there, that we did ask, maybe by the time we get to the end of this process and the recommendation that's made from this committee can then have a budget created specifically to make this important work even better. Thanks.
Yeah.
That's quite all right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. My team and I are ready to answer any questions. As I stated earlier, we created that document to try to bring this entire group up to speed on what has been happening in the department under reentry services so that you have an understanding of where we are and as a collective, as this group, where we would like to go for the future to improve reentry services and expand it even more. So I know it was a lot in the document for you to look at, folks. So if there are any particular questions, shoot, let us try to answer them.
All right. Yeah, no, I have a question. I heard the story about the recent legislative audit report on the mental health services in the prison. Sounded like, so I just was curious where you think that's headed in light of that report. Because so yeah, that was my question.
Where is headed? Now that's a good question, because any of you who, and I have to choose my words carefully because I realize this is recorded. Any of you who watched the proceedings would have clearly been able to see that questions were asked, but we were, at least as far as I'm concerned, from my portion, not able to fully answer the questions so that those legislators in the room would understand where we are. There was misinformation in that audit report. There should have been clarity for the auditors, which was not provided by some of our staff. We found out about it after the horse has already left the stable and closed the gate. And I'm going to use an example. It was an example about, I'm going to use the word astronomical number of people who hadn't received suicide risk assessments in a 5 or 6 month window. And anybody who knows the intake process and how we operate would know that that was humanly impossible. So why was that misinformation interpreted that way? Because when an auditor comes in and you give them data and they ask a question, if you don't know how to answer, they move right along and say, no,
Right.
I am. And so we are responding to all of those questions and providing clarity. I'm gonna stop there.
Yeah, no, I apologize if I put you on the spot with that question. I really do.
No, I'm sure you're the first, but you won't be the last.
Well, in my role as Assistant Attorney General, I've had to answer those legislative audits, some very critical ones before. So I know how it can be been in your shoes a little bit before. But
it would have been nice to know that they were there, number one.
Yeah.
It would have been nice to know who they talked to, number two.
Right.
And been able to really look at the responses before it was submitted.
Right.
So we were very disappointed that it was shoved at us at the last minute. And so it is what it is. So people are going to walk away with their own opinions, their own interpretations of what they've heard. But just because you heard it doesn't make it 100% factual true. That's all I'm going to say.
No, thanks. I appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Next question.
I have more, but I don't want to take up all the time.
Well, I have a question. Assistant Secretary Brooks, and I would like to know, does the department currently have a definition on recidivism? And I know that if you read different reports published by different people, those definitions, they change. So has the department come up with its own definition for recidivism?
To my understanding, rejoining the department, I believe the definition still stands. 3 years is the rate of recidivism. And you have to be careful not to, in my opinion, count a person who was brought back for a probation violation, something that they had a disagreement with their agent, for example, and they brought him in. That's not a reoffense. That should not be counted as recidivating, as far as I'm concerned. That's not a new crime. So yeah, and that's done by the data and analysis unit. So unless that changes, 3 years is still the definition of when a person recidivates with a new crime.
Is that used across all of the departments? Because correct me if I'm wrong, is there not an official report that comes out that talks about, it's like,
I believe that there was an official report that was generated a few years ago. I'm not sure how often it's done. I don't think it's annual, but I believe I saw one when I came back. We can ask the Assistant Secretary for Data and Policy to provide a copy of that, because I believe one does exist. It might be a little old, because technically you wouldn't do it until every 3 years to capture the data anyway, if 3 years is the definition. So Please make a note of that, Michelle, Ellen, so we can ask for that. Next question.
I think Dr. Andrews had his hand up first.
Oh, hey, Doc.
Hey, how's it going, everyone? Sorry, I joined a couple minutes behind. Yeah, thank you for putting that, for providing this to us.
Yeah.
As you know, I sit on the Lived Experience Committee that was also part of helping put that together. So my question is, towards the end with the proposed budget. So a couple of questions about the proposed budget. So, right after the budget, you kind of list what these things, what staffing is meaning and what some of these positions are. And then you also, shortly after, you have the innovative programs from the Lived Experience Committee members. And you list some of these programs, which I imagine was you asked the Lived Experience Committee to provide like that description was the process. That's not the real full question, but I'm just curious about
what is the question? I'm trying to wait for this question.
So that is a question about,
I would defer to Ellen because I know she communicated with people to put that part in there. I didn't ask them, so
Okay.
Ellen can speak up on how that was presented because by all means, it's not an inclusive list of everything that everybody's doing. Just want to give some examples, level examples. So Ellen, can you answer Dr. Andrews' question on that?
Sure. Thanks you, Dr. Andrews, for bringing that up. A lot of these innovative programs actually were recommended or brought up to the Secretary's office, and then my team really talked to some of the lived experience folks. It had really not anything to do with being on a lived experience committee. It was more about what they were doing within their community. And so we just brought up examples of this. This is far, there's only a few. We didn't want to have like 27 pages or whatever, but there are many more in the pipeline. And, again, lived experience folks bring a lot to the table in terms of their models and what they want to get accomplished. So
thank you.
I hope that helps.
Yes, that did. And that's kind of what I recalled also. So then the question around budget is, this is kind of a proposed budget that you would like. Is this something that is actually proposed to be appropriated within? And then so that's one part of the question. The other thing is, I feel like, there should be a part of the budget that maybe, or, was there a consideration to make a part of the budget for these innovative ideas, like what you explained that the LEC brought up? Like, should we be asking for a part of the budget to provide for the opportunity to bring innovative programs like what was presented?
I don't think that we should count that out. But again, what we tried to do was let you guys know where our thought processes are right now, what processes and programs we have right now. Again, this is not an inclusive document, and it was really to give this committee a starting point. That budget needs to be flushed out even more, as far as I'm concerned. It was let's quickly put something in there so people can see what we have as far as staffing, how limited it is, even though there's 18,000 incarcerated individuals, and there's the 180-day list that we use to try and target those that are going to be getting out soon. Everybody knows that you hear that's almost like a cliche, reentry should start the day you're incarcerated. Well, you can't start the day somebody's incarcerated if you don't have the staff to start it. So you got to start somewhere, as the department did, and pull those positions out of case management, which made case management short for the 18,000 individuals, to help those getting out connect with services and treatment and reentry. So you asked a great question, because we should include in the budget proposal funding to support those initiatives. Now, will it get funded? That's another story.
Right.
Because I would like to see the bare bones get funded first.
Right.
If I have my druthers. But I like the old saying, you have not because you ask not. You never know. Maybe some philanthropic organization might want to throw in some money into the pot. You never know.
Yeah, I mean, I should also add to the question that, I mean, I don't even know that I particularly agree or would be in favor of, if the state were to provide those funds, for them to sit with DPSCS. I think I made that comment in one of our earlier meetings, is that, I mean, I think there might be in a more appropriate place than for
Like where, for example?
That's what we're here for. I think. I think part
Well,
of it.
you said I think it's a more appropriate place. I thought you meant you had a.
Well, I think I had mentioned before about the community that I know, for instance, that P2P serves, might see it questionable that to give the money to, because I mean, it might seem questionable to give the money to corrections, and there's already this view that corrections is not appropriately spending the money to help us. That's the view. So I fear that it might, that might not be the best way to give the money to the community. Is to first give it to corrections, and then corrections give it to the community.
I don't disagree with you, but that view is flawed in and of itself, because we don't have any money to give anybody anyway. So I don't know where people think we got money to give out to organizations, because we don't. You function on
I think
grants.
those hypothetically is what I had mentioned, like in an earlier meeting.
And I do agree with what you're saying. And I think that as we flush out everything from this committee, we should definitely consider putting that in. Doesn't have to be with DPSCS, and technically not being flipped. I think it should be with somebody else, so that way we don't have to track it.
Right.
Let somebody else give it out and track it and monitor it. So anyway, let's see. We need to align discussion related to next steps. I see that because you all have asked questions that aren't, some are in that document, some are outside the document, but go ahead. Vanessa, you have your hand up.
Yes, my question goes back to the definition of recidivism.
Mm-hmm.
This is a point of clarification. Are you saying that someone returns on a parole violation, which is what happens a lot of times, that doesn't count as recidivism? If that person...
I was giving my personal opinion. I said I don't believe that should count. No, I wasn't speaking of the policy. And I don't believe that it does, but I'm not sure because I haven't looked at the recidivism policy. So that was just a personal opinion comment.
Right.
If you come back on a parole violation, but you haven't really committed a crime, I don't think you should be considered to recidivated. That's my opinion.
But they're still being locked up and serving out a sentence. Or am I missing something? I just want to, this is clarification.
No, I'm not talking about those that come back and are reincarcerated and serving out a sentence. I was talking about somebody that was brought in, but they didn't keep them. Now, why don't we do this? Why don't we, as I've asked them to do, get a copy of the recidivism policy, and then we can send it out to the group and look at it. And then we can all ask questions. How about that?
Okay, thank you.
All right. Next question. I don't know how much time you want to spend on this, Mr. Chair, but.
No, I mean, I think that it's important, although we do have a subcommittee that is going to actually look at this. I do want the entire task force to have the opportunity to weigh in on something that was provided to them. And you didn't get an opportunity to actually go into it. So I'll ask another question that I have before I yield the floor back, and that is, how are you all currently covering all of the institutions right now? I know you said you talked about the limitations, understandably so. What is your approach to covering the institutions right now?
I thought that was outlined in there. Maybe it wasn't. For example, you might have a person that covers 2 or 3 facilities in Jessup. You have 2 people on the Eastern Shore to cover those 3 campuses. You have a couple down in Baltimore that serve multiple facilities. When you only have 11 people, they got to be spread out and cover more than one area, depending on where the population is. This would be ideal to have somebody in everyone, but we don't have that.
I believe Mr. Holliday has his hand up.
I would just wanted to speak in regards to what Mr. Brooks was saying about the recidivism. I think, the distinction is you have some people that are on mandatory or parole, and they actually, while they're on parole, get a new offense. That would be recidivism, in my opinion. However, you get people to get returned on technical violations that aren't related to any new crime or anything like that. They're being basically returned for non-compliance, in the current crime, that they were released on.
That's you hit the nail on the head. That's what I was saying. Maybe I didn't express it exactly that way, but that's my opinion. Yes, Donna, you said you had more questions.
Yeah, first of all, I want to thank you for sharing this and putting this together. That should have been the first thing I said. So thank you. This really is a question, but I'm hoping at some point in this process we can maybe see a demonstration of how the Reentry Passport, the MD Think portal works.
Yeah, Ellen, talk about that. Ellen's worked really hard to get that back on track.
Yeah, sounds great.
Right. So what the MD Think or MD Reentry Passport portal is all about is it's really, we've been really focused on vital documents. So when case management requests vital documents from whether it's MVA, Social Security, or vital records, once they're returned to the facilities, they are uploaded into MD Think. At that time, it's really a repository for any incarcerated individual that leaves our facility. They get their documents from the base file, but if they lose them or they don't have, it's a way for them to have copies. Part of the challenges have been you have to create an email account. So we're working very closely with parole and probation to ensure that those incarcerated individuals that are under PMP will help the incarcerated individual create those accounts and link those accounts. So we've had some challenges with the actual systems talking to each other and whatnot, but we are on a road right now to ensure that this is an opportunity. We're looking to expand out in terms of it being a repository for anything that happens behind the fence. So, for example, certification potentially in school or education, whatever. So we're trying to partner with our internal partners inside as well.
Thank you. It's great.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
really
Ellen,
great.
since you told me that they had sort of fixed the bugs and everybody can now access it to upload, what was the number you told me?
Right now, there's 1.7K documents that have been uploaded into the system. And that is either birth certificates, social security cards. And there was a glitch in the MVA ID because they switched over to the real ID. And that has since been resolved as of yesterday. So we're happy to report that we can now upload those IDs.
That is so big.
Yep. And really the team at MDH is, DHS is really proactive and really trying to help us and work with us as well. So.
Thank you, Ellen. That's really, congratulations.
Yeah,
great.
Thanks.
Okay.
Okay.
Any more questions? Any more questions for Assistant Secretary Brooks and Ellen Rappaport from the Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services? This meeting, I definitely appreciate how smooth this went and all the questions. And I know there's more questions that folks have. I would encourage you to write those questions down. And you can send those questions to myself or one of the vice chairs, and we can make sure that we streamline questions, because I have some other questions as well.
Well, go ahead real fast. Don't shoot him. Come on.
Well, so the reentry agreements with the various jurisdictions.
Right.
How many jurisdictions do you currently have? I believe it's 11 last time I looked. Has that number changed, that you all have actual agreements with to send
Ellen, what's the current number?
I think the current number was 14, I believe. And one of the things that, this is before I got here, but we've updated at least 4 of them. So while they're in the bucket and they're current in these 14 jurisdictions, we've updated Anne Arundel County, Prince George's County, Montgomery County, and Howard County. Those are the 4 that have been updated within the last year.
And how
Well,
are,
when we have them, not to cut you off, but my disappointment since I'm back in this role is that, to my knowledge, and somebody on the team can correct me if I'm wrong, only Anne Arundel County has stepped up and come into the facilities and is actively trying to recruit individuals to come back into their facility. Even though there might be MOUs with all of those others, they're not actively engaging. And I do remember, and I think I shared this earlier with this group, when I was with Baltimore County, for example, as the deputy director, and all of this was really coming to fruition. When the state offered $45, the counties laughed at it and said, no, we're not doing that because it costs us more than $45 a day to keep a person. So people dug their heels in. So then finally, I believe it was last year, but don't hold me to it, or year before last, counties were given the option to negotiate what they want the fee to be to house those individuals for the last part of their incarceration, whatever that will be. So Montgomery County has one price, Prince George has negotiated another price. Anne Arundel said, we don't want any price, just send them to us.
Wow.
So everybody's doing something different. And I want everybody to always keep at the forefront of their mind. They can refuse to go back. And we can't force them to do it. I think we should do everything in our power to encourage them to do it, point out the advantages. And I haven't been there to observe it, but, and Marsha's on the line, she can correct me if I'm wrong. She's even brought in resources with her to talk to them to kind of give, you know, some ideas, I guess, of what the benefits would be. So that those MOUs exist, Josh, but they're not functioning as well as I think they could or should. And I see 2 hands raised. One was Marsha's and one was Vanessa. I don't know who came up first. And then Walter.
You can
Since
go,
I'm talking about Marsha's program, let's go with Marsha.
You can go, Marsha.
I'm sorry. Thank you. So when it comes to the local reentry MOU, so Assistant Secretary Brooks is actually correct, because I was curious that if while we were the only ones that were coming in, and if we were the only ones that were, you know, coming into the facility to talk about, you know, what they would get for, you know, coming back through the local reentry program. So my concern is not an indictment on nobody on this phone, so I hope no one take offense. It's just an observation. So we worked for 3 years on ombudsman. Everyone knows about the conditions in, you know, the state prisons. That's part of the complaint, you know. So let that be what that is. So you have I know for us, I can speak for Anne Arundel County, that you have one of the cleanest and robust programs in the state in a local detention center.
Yep.
And we come in and talk to these individuals about the local reentry program, and they want to come back. Some of them because this is the thing, in pretrial, when they was in pretrial, they were here anyway. So some of them already know what it looks like to be here at Ordnance Road. And the women were very articulate about that. And then they say they want to come back. And I know we're saying that they have to volunteer, but if it just doesn't make sense to me that they rather stay in what is perceived or what has been stated to be deplorable conditions, as opposed to coming back for the last year to a detention center where you will have access to services and is clean, and so and also we also have the same things. We have work release, we have house arrest, we have the same opportunities that they would have if they're with the state prison system. But then we find out later, and I don't know if there's a breakdown with the communication with the population versus the staff, then people, all of a sudden out of the blue, they decline, and then we don't get documentation as to why they were declined. And I am a big advocate of not taking someone's voice, because I don't like my voice to be taken. So if someone's declined, I'd rather hear from that individual why they declined versus to hear from the staff or someone why they declined.
I think that's
And
a
then
good point.
secondly, I also had a situation where we had the Office of the Public Defender had a client, and their recommendation as their client was to come back through local reentry, and the individual wanted to come back, but then all of a sudden the person did not want to come back to Anne Arundel County because they didn't want to get off of work release, or they wanted to just relocate to Frederick. So it just did not, I'm just saying the math, not math. And, I'm still working on some things right now to try to figure out what exactly is the breakdown. But
I think you raised some good points, and I don't want to cut you off because you had the same questions that I asked. I asked the same question. But why all of a sudden did they change their mind? So inquiring minds want to know. I think that it should be a document that they get to sign that says, for whatever reason they listed, I've reconsidered, changed my mind. Because don't have you come out and your team and you talk to them, oh yeah, then all of a sudden the staff say, oh, they changed their mind. Really? Okay. It's two sides to every page. So that needs to be flushed out even more as we work more with you and your program. So I agree 100% with everything that you've said. Now, the one thing I would like to clarify is that, for example, and I don't know if you've been in the building since you came back. I think you went to Women's. I don't know if they took you to Project Fresh building, but that building is as clean and immaculate as your Ordnance Road facility is, and has all kind of programs and stuff for those women that are there. So that is the quote unquote pre-release center for women, since they closed down the pre-release center on Calvin Road, which I still will never understand till this day. And now we have to build another one somewhere in Baltimore City when we had a perfectly one operating. So that being said, I agree with what Marsha said. I think it needs to be documented that they changed their mind. I would like to hear from them why you changed your mind. Because when I audited every place of adult confinement in Maryland, and I mean, I've been in every jail and prison and pre-release that there was or is, Ordnance Road has always been a fabulous facility to be in. So I don't understand. So you bring up
to do jail. I mean, why? I mean, if you got to do jail.
Yeah.
I mean,
Vanessa, you had your hand up and then went down. Did you change your mind?
I still have a question. Because these things always baffle me. Because I think when you're incarcerated, you have so few choices. But it always seems like when it's a choice that's really advantageous for a person, we say that we can't make them do it. So why can't we make them go back and finish their?
Because it's not in the law for us to force them to go back. That's my understanding.
But don't they get moved around from jail to jail for
they
other
get
reasons?
moved around to prison in the system, but it's the difference between taking them out of the DOC prison and putting them back in a county facility.
Right.
I'm with Marsha. I was baffled. I'm like, wait a minute. I looked at the numbers. You tell me they said they wanted to go. Now you tell me all of a sudden they don't want to go. Why? Why is the question. So I have yet to hear an explanation. Oh, well, they got their work. Really? They knew that before when they were talking to the individuals that came into the facility. So we need to work on, when I say we, I mean we DPSCS need to work on developing some sort of form, document. I don't care if it's what's what I'm looking for, like a form letter where you can check off boxes and write some comments. There needs to be something in writing to say, I changed my mind, and give it to, I don't care if it's Anne Arundel County, Montgomery County, Prince George's County, after they've invested their time and energy to come in.
Right.
Tell me why you changed your mind. maybe you misunderstood something. Maybe somebody told you something after the fact that don't make sense or is incorrect. So that was one of the best points, and I'm glad I used y'all as an example because I just don't understand. Okay, Marsha's hand is back up, folks.
So so right now we're dealing with the individuals who are already incarcerated and bringing them back to Anne Arundel County. So I just do want to put a plug in that I am aggressively and intimately working with the judiciary, because now we're going to start to see local reentry on commitment orders.
Ooh, that'd be good.
Yeah, so we will be able to get in front of it, because I know for me, I can't speak for no one else, no other jurisdiction, but even though they say they don't want to come back through local reentry, but when they get released from DLC, then me and my team is getting the calls.
Let me ask you a quick question, Marsha, because I want to know if I heard accurate information. Is it true that individuals, if they come back to Anne Arundel County, they have to go through like a 30-day assessment, or they would sit there before they would have work release or be able to do a job or anything? Is that true?
I'm going to slowly give you a cautious that's not true.
Okay.
Because and once again, for everyone on the call, I am the third reentry coordinator for the county and for a local jurisdiction that's been put into a county role in that role. So I do intimately work with our case management system, try not to step on any toes, but putting in some more realistic, protocols in place when it comes to that, weaving that reentry process into the case management and the fabric of what we operationally do, traditionally, in the jail system. But this is the plan, and that's me talking from with Mr. Kelson, our facility administrator. So individuals, like say if they were on work release with DLC, but then they wanted to come back through local reentry and come back to the facility to be back in their jurisdiction, we are not going to have them quit their job if they already had one, if that makes sense.
Good.
They will be able to keep that job and then still come back through, local reentry. And then I also want to make another point. They get days. They get them credits for coming through local reentry and could come over here and not do a thing. Just come over but that's not what I'm encouraging. Of course, we want them to program and to, do work release, house arrest, whatever, participate in community-based programming. But if they wanted to just come back and be lazy, for lack of better words, they will still, just for coming back, they get DEM credits. So that's why it's not.
Well, the DEM credits on par with what they get for being in the DLC facility and be quote unquote lazy. Is it point for point?
Well, they don't get, if they're not going. So if they're with DLC, if they don't get time, if they're not working, they get time for, credit for working, for going to school, for participating in vocational programming. But I'm just saying that they could come back through local. They would just for coming back.
I got
through,
you.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They could come over here and just want to stay in their room every day. And we do have dorm style setting, and Ordinance Road is set up for unit management, which is also unique as well. We don't have segregation units and things like that here at Ordinance Road.
Right.
So yeah,
Okay.
so it just, that's why I was just saying that it just, it makes sense. Yeah.
Okay. I don't know what else is on the agenda, Mr. Chair, but
well, no, I think this is a productive conversation that is beneficial, and I'm glad that you use Anne Arundel County as an example. I'm not biased, although I live in Anne Arundel County. I
think, not to cut you off, because I don't want to forget, I think Marsha raised a good point when she said that she's working with the judiciary, because if it's a part of a release order, then they don't have a choice but to go back. If it's not a legal order, they can say, I don't want to go. So I think that's an excellent idea. And if Anne Arundel was able to pull that off and set the precedent with that, I think it would be a good example for the Prince George's and the Montgomerys and everybody else, even Howard, as small as Howard County is. Because when it comes to the work release piece, their contention was there people could walk right across the street and all those warehouses and stuff and work jobs over there, especially if they're working it from and they're in the Jessup area anyway. So I would love to see that be a part of an order from the judiciary that they have to go into a local go back home to a local reentry program. I think that's an excellent idea.
I think it's an excellent idea too, and I think that.
And I think once they get there, they will say, "Well, it's better than I thought it was going to be." Yeah, because it's just what they need, and we just got to convince them to do it.
Well, Assistant Secretary Brooks, I know that people get moved around all the time against their will, and they don't necessarily want to go. But what I'm saying for the purpose of public safety, I think Marsha is correct. But I also think there's some policy changes too that we can look at to say, okay, this person would be better off going to a local reentry program that has everything that they would need in order to, get a job, get housing.
People, I'm not disagreeing with you, but I'm not a lawyer. Mm-hmm. And when you're committed by the judge to the Division of Correction, to the commissioner, legally, the commissioner can move you in any facility throughout the entire system based on whatever your needs are or the needs of the department. It does not translate over to forcing somebody to go to a local jurisdiction. The law is not written that way. And we got Delegate Taylor's hand up, who could be the perfect person, in my opinion, to present this kind of legislation in the first place. She presented this legislation and got it passed. Her hand is up.
Yes, Delegate Taylor.
I appreciate that handoff, because that's exactly where I was going with this, is that this is I love this discussion because these are the things I envision would bubble up. These are the ideas that would come out of these discussions in this task force. My part of my question was going to be, like, we are having this particular discussion in the full forum. I think we're going to have the exact same discussion when the post-release services and expansion subcommittee meets. And I think from there, we'll remember this discussion. We'll have some, create, look at what Anne Arundel is able to accomplish and possibly create some best practice or share some best practice, and then make a policy recommendation that I could put forth in a bill if needed. Like, everything doesn't have to be bill format, but if this is something that has to go through the General Assembly, then absolutely. That's why I'm here. And I saw Senator West on the call earlier. He's the cross-file for this bill, so he's a sponsor as well. From the Senate side, I know he would be happy to move legislation forth as well. So love the discussion. I know we're going to have this whole discussion again, and I'm hoping to be on the post-release services and expansion subcommittee so I can be a part of those discussions. So thank you, guys. Appreciate you.
And thank you, Delegate Taylor. And thank you, everyone, for asking, those questions and weighing in on it. I think that it's very, very important that we talk about this. And Delegate Taylor, to your point, I think that we'll be talking about this more than just one time. And it's important that we have these conversations. Before we get offline, again, I just want to remind you of a couple of things. Please, please, please fill out the form that I dropped in the chat. If you have not completed the form, please take the opportunity to do so. It's very important so that we can set up these subcommittees and we can send out an email. The subcommittee chairs will be emailing everyone to let you know what subcommittee you're on. If there's any questions, please feel free to contact me. Our next meeting is scheduled for January 21st. I will make sure that I send out a calendar invite so everyone is aware of the next meeting, and you can mark that on your calendar, January 21st, 2025. My last comment before we end the meeting is please have a wonderful holiday. Please have a wonderful holiday. Please have a safe holiday, and ensure that you all enjoy time with family. Delegate Taylor. You're on mute.
Sorry, with that said, just know that Senator West and I will be starting session January the 8th, and meetings during the week, during the day, especially this one, conflict with our session time. But there's one thing that I really want you guys to consider in your next meeting is, do we have enough time to submit the report by the end of the year? Because if you don't feel like we have enough time, Senator West and I would have to put forth legislation asking for an extension for the report due date. And I'd love to do that early in session if needed. So please consider that please put that on the agenda for your next meeting.
I'll tell you what I'll do, Delegate Taylor. I'll do one even better. I'll make sure that I send out a poll following this meeting to every member of the task force to be able to weigh in, and we'll make sure that we do have it on the as an agenda item. And I also take a step further and make sure that I share that sheet with you so that you can see what the membership is actually saying about the time frame, whether or not we feel like we have enough time. Okay. And with that being said, does anybody have any announcements, updates that they would like to provide before we end this meeting?
Nope.
Okay. Hearing none, you all have a happy Christmas, and take care, be safe, and God bless. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Happy holidays.
Happy